In terms of actually talking about the games and whatnot, I have been able to play a little bit of Metaphor. I forgot to listen to the episode where Alex talked. Did Alex ever talk about the demo?
He talked about it briefly.
Okay, he didn't do like a full in depth or anything.
I mean, not too in depth.
Okay. So Metaphor is the newest game from Atlas, or if you for some reason don't know Atlas at this point, they are Persona developers and creators. So yeah, and this is their first non-Shin Megami or Persona game that they really focused on. That's sort of the big AAA, I guess technically would be at this point.
I mean, I would consider it.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess I never really considered them AAA for a long time, but I guess at this point, it's a AAA. And now that I think about it, Persona 3 Reloaded came out. That would have been Atlas game, non-spinoff, but still Persona.
Yeah, I mean, it's still Persona. But yeah, I mean, at this point, you kind of have to consider it AAA. I mean, they have one of the best-selling franchises in the world right
now. Overall, fantasy genre. The opening is actually very interesting because in most like Persona games, you usually get a nice little music intro and everything like this. And this one, it starts off with just a opening story segment of a guy outright just killing the king of the kingdom. He straight up murders him. Then it has a nice little scene of all of his counselors saying like discussing who could have killed him, yada yada yada, and then killer guy saying a bunch of stuff and more or less making it known, I want to become the new king and stuff, which is an interesting transition because if you play the demo, it does not do the sort of musical intro it has, versus in the full release game, it has a musical intro after that. In the demo, it just shows that opening scene and then throws you in the menu. It's like, all right, you can start game now.
Okay. So yeah, you get for the full release, you do get a little bit more.
Yeah, you get like their nice version of a musical intro, sort of showing off a bunch of scenery stuff for this book that has some context for the game's story, which hasn't fully elaborated yet for me. More or less, the game just starts you're riding in a carriage to go to the city. You get attacked by bandits. A bandit tries to take your book and kicks you off a cliff. Then you're left in the desert. And you spend the first couple minutes of the game just running from all the creatures because it won't let you fight them.
Seems about right.
Yeah. Eventually make it to the city. Becomes very apparent that the city's residents are very prejudiced towards specific races. Every race besides, well, I say races, they call them tribes. Tribes of people besides two who either look like this fantasy world's version of elves with pointy ears, or I forget what the tribe's name that has horns. If you have horns or ears, you're treated as a regular person. If you're not, you're considered lesser in the capital city. Which it mentions like there's like 13 tribes.
Okay.
So there's a fair amount. There's one that's real hated on, which is more or less animal-eared people. Typically like long pointer ears, almost like foxes or rabbits or things like that. There's a weird tribe that has boxes on their heads.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't fully understood that one. I've always run into a couple NPCs, but yeah, they collect. One of them's a weird shop owner that collects a bunch of stuff and sells it to you at oddball prices. He's more or less the version of. You did play Persona 5, right?
I played it some. I never beat it.
Okay, but you remember at least on like the Sundays you could do check the TV for like the shopping channel.
Yeah,
he's the shopping channel.
Okay.
I just fight him. Was like, hey, what you got this time, guy? He's like, oh, this is what I got. All right, give me. Long and short of it, the main opening story is just you're apparently part of a group that has the exiled prince who was attacked one night by Lucius, the guy who killed the king at a younger age and left a curse on the prince. And one of your allies, Grius, took the prince away, hid him away at your elder tribe's village, where his curse has been festering, and y'all have been keeping him alive. You've come to meet Grius, so y'all could start y'all's attack to kill Luis after he's killed the king. You enroll in the army, go to a fort which is being attacked by a creature, which it's very entertaining. So these big creatures that are sort of like myth for the people in the city, but not to the people out in the country, is almost like Titan-style creatures.
Okay.
Called humans.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Alex mentioned that?
Alex mentioned something about that.
So humans attacking, you have to deal with that. You unlock your archetype, your first archetype, which I'm going to be honest, I actually really like how they've decided to introduce the archetypes for our main cast as a whole thing of like the archetypes come to you whenever you find your resolve and whatnot in one specific way. Very specifically for our main character, he's chosen the resolve to fight through and seek answers for why everything's happening. Thus, he unlocks the Seeker. But I do like the whole intro is like some other beings like, you now have a choice. You can either do this or you can die. And that's like, yeah, no, I'm going to choose the other thing. And literally reach into their chest, rip out their heart, which has now become a mechanical heart with like, instead of regular like organs or veins, almost mechanical wires attached to it, which is stylized like a microphone, like a stage microphone.
Okay.
And more or less they shout their resolve into it and whatnot, unlocking their power. In which it also has a nice little imagery when it happens for each of the characters.
I was just gonna say, man, Atlas, they have some fascination with doing some fucked up shit.
Yeah.
For like unlocking your powers. Like,
I mean, 5 was very mild.
Well, yeah, it's like 5 is
But
probably
then
the
you
most
have
mild.
3.
I was gonna say 5 is kind of mild because these are the ones that I know. Where It's like 5, you rip the mask off and it like rips the skin and you start bleeding down and that. And then 3, you just point a gun at your head and pull the trigger.
You gotta have this gun-looking thing. You have no idea what it's gonna do, and be willing to shoot yourself in the head.
And then now you're ripping your heart out. It's like they started down and they're like, okay, extreme, and they're like, okay, well, let's go a little more mild for this. Now they're like, new game, back to our old ways.
Which which is funny because in between 3 and 5 there was 4, in which the whole thing with that was like the characters have to face their other side of them that they don't want to acknowledge. That's them, and more or less they have to accept that into themselves, and they slightly become like a evil version of themselves for a moment, and then make them into one, which is very mild versus the shooting yourself in the head.
Yeah.
Then they upped it a bit, like, well, that was okay.
Yeah.
Let's go with some face ripping.
Yeah. They're probably like, okay, this is probably like the guy in charge. Okay, we can't do the shooting in the head again. we gotta be calm this time. And they're like, for 5, they're like, okay, we can step it up a little bit. Now they're like,
It's a new IP. We have so many fans from 5.
Rip it out.
But yeah, no, they shout their resolve into their heart and unlock their archetype, which is a very interesting thing in terms of combat mechanics. It is a very nice blend of Shin Megami and then Persona, which it is leaning heavier on the Shin Megami Tensei side because for me, it's not much of an issue, but for like newer people, if like they're used to Persona combat, I could see it as a little adjustment, not too much. But the combat's not particularly forgiving. But I do have a regret because I wasn't sure what Metaphor was going to be. I did start it on normal. And I've been going through, I was like, okay, I should have bumped it up.
Can you not change it afterwards?
I can. I just haven't yet because like during the whole demo area and whatnot, once you're the initial opening, you're escaping through some mines. You have a boss fight, then after the boss fight, you go through an area. It's like, oh, there's a dragon there. We should sneak now so we don't wake up the dragon. I just went, I'm going to fight the dragon.
Yeah. Why would you? You had a limit test.
Mopped the floor with that fight. Because they built it up, I was like, okay, it's Sword Shin Megami style, so this might actually be a hard fight. So I prepped my team and everything I go into. I was like, shit. I overdid it. But overall, so far, the story's been interesting with the whole introduction of this competition that the late king apparently somehow cast some, which is literally called royal magic, which has lifted the palace out of the ground, and now his face is more or less taking the bottom of the platform that's holding up the castle, and more or less announces, whoever will take my throne will have, whoever's the bravest, yada yada, has the citizenry's faith. And also on there is a big rock that has the faces of the most popular candidates, which changes based on people's views and whatnot, magic stuff. Which has been very interesting because Louise, our big bad, he's just straight up being, I'm evil the entire time, right in public, in front of everyone. And it's a whole setup thing. Like, he's been a decorated general, so like the public, he has lots of public followers who are like, yeah, Louise is the only one who can help us and whatnot. Then other people are like, this is wrong. Why are you doing this at the king's funeral? So it's a very interesting take of where the big bads are sort of like skulking in the background. He's just straight up like, I'm gonna do my thing.
Yeah. It's like, I'm gonna do my thing. Come stop me if you can.
He's literally mocks the king at his own funeral. Has somebody blow up the king's casket, like straight up, just out with it.
I was gonna say, is it very obvious that he's the one doing it?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
champion.
Yeah. He was the very one who very much in the public square mocked the king for everything, saying he's the only one who could lead the country after the failed king. And then he literally has people who works for him come out and during the whole chaos and whatnot, destroy the king's casket.
But you know what? It's nice every now and then to just have someone who's like, yeah, I'm taking this. It's like, if you want to come challenge me, get the backing of the people and come do it.
Quite literally what he's done. Because he's just like, you can always see my face getting bigger. The citizenry knows what we must do. And then walks away. And I'm like, well, goddamn.
I mean, yeah, nice. I will say, nice to have a villain who's just like, yeah, I'm gonna do my thing. Instead of like trying to be like, oh,
Skulk and dagger.
It's that, or it's like either that or just like, I'm doing what needs to be done. I mean, granted, this guy's kind of doing that, but it's like not trying to.
He's not covering it up at all.
He's not sugarcoating it. He's like, I'm gonna do this out in the open, and the people are gonna love me for it.
Yes, that's quite literally what he's doing.
Okay, yeah, that's. Can appreciate that.
Yeah.
How far do you how much have you played?
A couple hours. I beat the initial opening dungeon, or the initial fight opening dungeon. I'm currently in the first like main dungeon where you're going to fight one of Louise's underlings, who's a necromancer. He's trying to acquire the king's scepter, which is the king's personal magic, what they're called igniters, which allows him, which amplifies his royal magic. It implies that it has some royal magic as well, but it's more like an amplifier more than anything.
Okay.
So we're currently delving through the catacombs, in which I try to do my usual Persona thing and just do it in a, as it is in the style of Persona of like, hey, this dungeon's open. You have this many days to go fight the boss, otherwise game over.
That's what I was about to ask. Is how much Persona is this game with its like? Because with that, I'm assuming like you have your daily thing where you can do certain actions in the day. Okay.
So more or less in terms of it, combat is very much more Shin Megami Tensei focused versus other aspects or like social links and whatnot have been made some sort of form in this game in terms of Persona side. So it's a very good, they've done a very good blend with metaphor in this of taking the best of both Shin Megami Tensei 5 and then Persona 5 and just blending them into this game.
Okay. Yeah, because I was mainly wondering that because like the Persona thing of like the daily activities and stuff.
Yes.
That's the part of the game I don't like.
Yeah. So I mean, in this one, you have your quest from people you can find and do stuff for them. You have the main dungeon, which you have to complete within a certain time. You have your what's called bonds in this one instead of social links, which I'll be honest, this game hands out bonds like they're candy.
Oh, I assume that you just get a bunch of them and they go up quick or something.
Well, they I haven't really focused on them yet, and I sort of get what they do because you only acquire new archetypes by acquiring the bonds. Because how the game phrases it, because instead of having a velvet room, he has the academia, which when he activates his first archetype, he shows up into a library and there's a guy named Moore who's just like, oh, someone's here. I've been trapped in this library for centuries. I don't know why. I don't remember. I know the king locked me up. I think I was studying archetypes, and you here allows me to continue my studies. Let's work together.
Yeah, kind of just, we need a way to tell you how to do this.
Yeah. So, and more or less, he's in a big room with a giant, I can't even remember what it is called, but you know the classic sort of circle with the human body and the arm movements? Yeah. He's in a room with that as a big statue, and that's in the game called the archetype tree, where you can mess with the archetypes and whatnot. And for each bond, you get a new archetype because it's more or less like, he explains it like, this is you. You have the power to activate people's archetypes to allow them to use this real magic, because people can't use magic without an igniter. And it's only through those who have like a certain resolve that you can acquire these archetypes, which are facets of heroes of the past.
Okay.
So like your first ally, he gives you warrior. Your fairy companion gives you mage. A little girl who's the daughter of one of your allies who has an untimely death at the funeral gives you healer. Second teammate gives you knight. And then you meet a random lady in the dungeon who's a bounty hunter who gives you brawler. So it hands these out like candy.
Yeah, I kind of appreciate that, though, where it's just like, hey, play with the system.
Yeah. And which they do allow, because with the whole archetypes thing, once you unlock them, it's available. You have to pay like an initial high cost to initially unlock it. Then for everyone else, it's cheaper. So you can mix and match archetypes, which is the whole system, because versus personas, where you're constantly fusing personas and whatnot, and then having your main support cast who has their personal ones, or Shin Megami Tensei, where you're fusing demons or recruiting them. You just have the archetypes here. So the archetypes have their own XP, which you level up to get new skills. And then as you increase bonds and whatnot, you can inherit skills from characters' other archetypes you've unlocked for them, and the skills they have unlocked through those archetypes.
So can you, like, I assume you unlock your, like, the archetype that you have.
Yes.
You could swap between them.
Yes, so like...
And that's just like your combat style or your magic or something?
Yeah, it's specifically your skills, and it also changes your stats a bit based on which one you're playing as. Because like mage will up your magic stat and stuff like that, versus like knight will up your strength a little bit, but very much raise your endurance.
Okay.
And then like the whole inherit thing, like it's 20 ranks and an archetype. So like my main character, I'm currently running healer, rank 10, which is unlocked like 5 skills. And then seeker has like rank 6. So I can take I have my healer with its 5 skills, and I can inherit a single skill from the seeker or any of the other archetypes I have of skills I've already unlocked.
Okay.
And which, as I've seen as you raise the bonds and that specific archetype that bond represents, and like on one of the ranks, it can up how many inherit skills you can get for that one. So like my mage one, it can inherit 2 skills instead of 1.
Okay.
So it allows you to mix and match builds to allow for deal with shortcomings for an archetype. For like, there's an instance in one of the small little boss fights in the catacombs. It's against a group of enemies that are completely immune to any kind of basic attacks of slashing blunt or piercing, so you specifically have to use magic. So for like the warrior, they don't have any magic skill, so naturally I have to choose an inherit magic skill from one of the other ones, so they can do something in that fight.
Yeah, besides just stand around and be like, okay, well, it's just.
I'll throw a healing potion.
It's like, I mean, I got nothing for you to do, so you just swing at him, I guess.
Which I very much enjoy the system. I'm still early on, so I can't do a whole lot with it. But I feel like as I get further in like mid game and whatnot, it'll allow for some very interesting builds.
Do you have a scope or like any idea of like how big the game is?
From my understanding, it's a good, at least like standard Persona, so going to be a good 60, 80 hours.
Okay. Yeah, because I wouldn't. That's one of those where it's like, you know, sometime before a game comes out, they'll throw a number out, but it's kind of interesting. I was curious if playing the game it had, or like if you could get kind of had a read for that.
It's going to be
potentially be
decently length because as of where I started, I tried to do my thing of just running the dungeon the first day, in which due to resource management and whatnot, in terms of just having to fight, not feasible. Then again, I'm also doing my first run, so I mean, it looks like if I really want to push it, I can finish the dungeon within 2 days. But if I want to do it in a more probably safer way, I should do it in 3, just for resource management.
Yeah.
But if I just want to really scrape by, I can do it in 2.
Okay.
Because I mean, on the first day, I got halfway through the dungeon, and that was with me having like. My character's HP was okay because I've stocked up on healing items with my MP, which allows me to use my magic and whatnot. He was like scraping by. Everyone was at like 1 to 20.
Yeah.
And I was like...
The usual problem.
I was like, I could keep going, but...
It's like, I can keep going, but it's going to be more tedious than anything.
Yes. But overall, been fun. It's a very much Atlas game. I feel like anyone coming from either Shin Megami Tensei 5, if they picked it up with the re-release of Vengeance, or Persona 5 Royal, could find some enjoyment in this game. As I said, it does have the bonds thing, and then you have your daily task of upping the what's called King's Virtues instead of your social stats, which are courage, wisdom, imagination, tolerance, and I don't remember the 5th one.
So, granted, you've only had a few hours in the game. I'm not going to tell you to like give it a number, like a ranking out of 10 necessarily, but I'm assuming this is a solid. If you like the style of game, pick it up.
Oh yeah, no. If you like Atlas's main flagships, yeah, you should definitely pick it up. Unless you just have something against fantasy, I would say don't pick it up. But I mean, if you like Atlas's main flagship games, I mean, I'd say pick it up. You know what's weird? Even though I say the combat's more like Shin Megami Tensei, because that's probably more of a viable reference for most people, with how the whole archetype thing works, and in terms of like weapon combat and things like that, I had a very vague feeling when I was initially going, is like, why does this feel like Digital Devil Saga? Which has no reference for most people.
I got nothing there.
Yes.
That went over my head.
It is an Atlas game from PS2 era. Then, yeah, no, I'm not going to go into it. But for anyone who happens to know that, it gets a bit of actually more like that. But yeah, that's all I got for Metaphor so far. Solid. I'll be curious to see how the archetypes open up after the base ones and how builds go.
Okay.